something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car. I actually went into the car to smell what the smell smelled like. And in my experience, the smell that I smelled inside that car was the smell of decomposition. Garrett jumped up into the trunk, front paws, stuck his head in, back up, did the eye contact, and gave me a fine train-on alert.
What does that mean?
He alerted to the odor of human decomposition.
I just got to tell you what my feelings are. I don't like how it smells. I'm being straight with you guys. I've been straight. I don't like the smell in the car.
There's no evidence that there is a child that is dead.
There is the possibility this child is no longer alive.
Yes, that can be concluded.
Casey is going through a nightmare and has been living a nightmare for the last several months. She has a missing child. She's also someone's child. This family has had to withstand something unlike anyone has ever seen. And we just ask that everyone respect that and everyone understand what Casey Anthony is going through.
You know, it's still amazing to me that throughout this entire ordeal, culminating in today's grand jury indictment of top mom Casey Anthony with murder 1 plus other charges, never once have we heard her make a public plea for people to help her find her child. Even today, when she is facing indictment, finally, the tears flow. But never did we see that for her daughter. Now, of course, the defense attorneys tonight will argue that means nothing in a court of law. I beg to disagree. To Dr. Lawrence Kobylinski, forensic scientist out of John J. College of Criminal Justice, and he is hired on board the Casey Anthony defense team. Dr. Kobylinski, do you believe that there is additional evidence from the body farm, that cutting-edge crime lab in Oak Ridge, Tennessee? Do you think that there are additional tests other than the air samples?
There very well may be additional tests. I'm very struck by what you just said. Lawson Lamar, the state's attorney, and I quote, he said the investigation contains intricate forensics that are on the cutting edge of science. And now I think that the defense team really has to look at that science, question the reliability, determine whether there are validation studies and whether there's support by other scientists in the relevant discipline for this technology.
Kobe, you know what? Save it for a jury, because I'm sure there's going to be one. Because the very same arguments have been made about fingerprints, they've been made about tire tracks, they've been made about touch DNA, they've been made about DNA,
yes,
deoxyribonucleic acid.
Remember that fingerprints.
Naysayers have said no such thing about cadaver dogs, fire dogs, drug dogs, you name it. Always a naysayer saying it's not so. So now you're going to tell me the science against Casey Anthony isn't so?
Well, you mentioned fingerprints, and remember that the FBI had a case recently, the Madrid train bombing, where 3 examiners got it wrong. We have to make sure that the science is reliable, because
you know what, Kobe, I couldn't hear
stake.
you. What type of science was wrong?
I said the fingerprint evidence in the Madrid train bombing case was wrong. The FBI...
You mean where the part of the train blew up?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, well, I guess so. When part of the train has blown up, how can you achieve a perfect fingerprint? But are you telling me right now on national TV that you doubt fingerprint technology, that you don't believe it's for real?
No, what I'm saying is that mistakes can be made.
Glad to hear that. But mistakes are not what you said before. Before you said the science may not be legitimate, and so the state's got a problem. Now you're saying mistakes. So what argument are you going to make, Kobe?
Well,
which one? You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Well, for the science to be admissible, it has to be deemed reliable and supported by the relevant discipline. Here we may have questions because it sounds to me like this is cutting-edge science.
So what about your mistake argument? Are you suggesting that the state has made mistakes handling the evidence?
I think anything is possible. We have to look closely at that.
So let's go to the lawyers. Ray Giudice, Doug Burns. Ray Giudice, just take off your defense hat for just a moment. There was a long, long time, years ago, you were a prosecutor.
Yes.
You were an officer of the court as a prosecutor. Now, it's very simple. every scientific test must be shown to be a reliable test.
That's right. A foundation
yes, no.
has to be laid. That's correct.
Now, do you also, like Kobylinski, doubt the validity of fingerprint tests?
Not at all. However, here's the doctor's point. When I first started prosecuting DUIs 25 years ago, they first introduced the breath test machine. You know, there were a lot of jurors that didn't believe a machine could tell you how much alcohol or how many beers that defendant had the night before, and there were a lot of not guilties for the first few years, and a lot of cases went up to the Court of Appeals. Cutting-edge science is issues for reversible error.
Doug Burns.
Look, I disagree with everybody in the sense that we can't talk about anything. Let's see the evidence in a courtroom, which is what you always preach, Nancy, and then and only then can we start challenging, questioning, and going back and forth, which is what we do for a living. And, of course, I was also a good guy, a prosecutor for 9 years.
Yes, you were. Let's go back to the reporters, everyone. Just hours ago, handed down a felony indictment against top mom Casey Anthony. We are taking your calls live to Erica in Florida. Hi, Erica.
Hi, I was curious as the reason why they didn't put, say, death penalty. Is it because they're going to use it as a bargaining tool for her to save herself?
Erica, that's very astute of you, Erica in Florida. Now, first of all, at this juncture, which is just the charging phase, no one expects for the state's attorney to come out and say, yes, we're going to seek the death penalty. Very rarely do you get a sudden announcement of that nature. Typically, it will be several days, weeks maybe, sometimes months after the initial indictment that decision is made. In many offices, it's made by a committee, not just the elected DA makes a decision. So I would not expect that for some time. But what about, Mike Brooks, the death penalty and a murder one charge as a bargaining chip for her, Casey Anthony, to tell where the body is?
Oh, absolutely, Nancy. You know, as Doug said, and as Ray said, I rarely agree with Doug and Ray, but I have to agree with them on this. They're going to sit her down, and when they start talking about lethal injection and putting her to death, that might strike a little bit of reality for a change in this young lady, and maybe decide to cooperate with law enforcement. But you know, we heard from Baez again today, Nancy. It's all about poor Casey. You know, what about poor Caylee as she lays somewhere, you know, decomposing? You know, come on, Casey, you've got to cooperate, or else you are going to get a needle in your arm. Bottom line.
Well, you know, to Leonard Padilla, I understand what everybody's saying about use the manslaughter charge as a bargaining chip. But you know what, Padilla? They had that chance to cut a deal a long time ago. Well, and the attorney, Jose Baez, got on air, said point blank, oh, no, I don't want immunity, no limited immunity deal for me. No, we're not working a deal. So, in my mind, that train has left the station, and now it's time to go forward with the prosecution.
I think you're absolutely correct, and I was just reviewing in the studio here while you were interviewing the other guests. She's not crying. There isn't a tear being shed down her face. She's not crying. She's the same person that was dealing with us when we were back there for those 9 days. There's a sadness in her face, but she's definitely not crying. You know, Padilla, another thing tonight, as much as people have lambasted Cindy Anthony, and maybe she's made some wrong choices, that house must be so quiet and so full of pain tonight. And let me tell you something else that was discussed many times when Rob Dick was driving her to and from her attorney's office. The choppers that were overhead, but they were never able to see the cars when they were under the overpasses. And that was something that was commented on several times. What more can you tell me about the quick change under the overpass, Jessica D'Onofrio?
Well, she was leaving her attorney's office with her mother. They went underneath that overpass, and she switched and got into her bail bondsman's car. It was a gray SUV. The bail bondsman's car takes off with her in it, and then an unmarked sheriff's deputy car pulls her over and then takes her to the Orange County Sheriff's Office in turn. After that, she goes to the Orange County Jail.
Grand jury process is a prosecutorial tool, and that is why it's not something that I would participate in. I'm not allowed to cross-examine, which is the true test of any evidence, the ability to withstand its cross-examination. And I don't think that's a process that we wish to engage in.